What's up, YouTube? Today we are making a tier list video of the top 10 dumbest things that atheists say to Christians. They should definitely stop saying these things because they don't have a lot of merit to them. So let's get into it. All right, let's jump in. But before we do, when I say S tier, I'm thinking like cream of the crop, dumb of the dumbest. Like no one should ever let these words come out of their mouth again. D tier would be like, maybe there's like some merit to it, but like they're just straw manning or something like that. Ultimately, I think they're all pretty dumb. We may not have any D tiers, but we'll jump in right to the first one. And so the first one is just, I hear this. It's like, hey, we're all atheists. I just believe in one less God than you do. I'm going to go B tier, kind of right in the middle of the pack. Okay, I get what you're trying to do. The problem is there's a big difference between an atheist and a monotheist. Like the whole nature of reality changes upon that statement. If there's a God and there is not a God, all of reality is shifted. So to try to just, like we're all the same. I just believe, like I don't believe in any other the other gods that you don't believe in. I just believe in one less God than you do. Yeah, I know. I get it. I understand what an atheist is and that I'm a monotheist. Totally understand that. You didn't have to spell that out for anyone. Totally makes sense. And it is a world changing, reality changing difference. And not to mention, it's just a dumb phrase. It's not even necessary. I totally get that you don't believe in God. Cool. So let's check out the next one. This one is I don't need God to be a good person. We're going to go A tier here. This is pretty dumb on a multitude of reasons. One, what the heck is a good person? Everybody's got their own idea. What I notice from atheists is that they're all good people. They're somehow all meeting their own standard of being good. Big shocker, right? No surprise there. Another reason why it's not any good is because guess what? Christianity's not about being a good person. I think following Jesus should sanctify you. You should be growing in holiness, growing in goodness. But the premise of Christianity is not about being a good person. And there's a problem here when you just kind of throw this good person blanket. Congratulations. Anyone can be a good person societally. Like, it's really not that hard, especially with just like our morality plummeting. It's like, just be normal and you've kind of already met that standard, right? Like, super easy. But as Christians, we're not concerned with the societal standard of good. I can always find somebody that I'm better than and somebody that's better than me. We're concerned with what is God's standard. And we understand that God is holy and that no one is good compared to God. And then on the other part of that, we understand that people don't have to be Christians to have morality. So we're not confused when non-Christians do good things because we understand that all people are made in the image of God and that He's given all people a conscience. You got to work really hard to sever that conscience and become like a psychopath or something. Right? There's just a multitude of reasons why this is a really dumb statement to say. I totally get that you can be a good person without God. Congratulations. Get you a medal. You can throw it around your neck. Just write good person. And I'm just talking in a societal sense. But we're concerned with what is our relationship with God and how do we get reconciled back to Him. And just being a good person doesn't do that. All right, number 3, we are going all the way to S tier. I just off the top, I know it. It's Sky Daddy. Anytime anyone drops the Sky Daddy words, I know immediately this person has no idea what they're talking about. That's just my immediate thought. And there's an old proverb, and it says, "Answer a fool in his folly, and you'll become like him in his foolishness." Whenever somebody drops the Sky Daddy term, I know they are not serious in this conversation about whether or not God exists. They're just trying to mock me, mock Christianity, mock theism, mock God. And you should stop saying it because it's a very serious philosophical question at minimum on whether or not God exists. It's a very important question on the face of humanity and the universe and reality as a whole. So the moment you go into mocking mode, you kind of just look like an idiot. And that's why it's S tier, because it should just be dropped. And the last thing I'll say about it is because we don't think God's in the sky. He's a transcendent being. I digress. Secularism is better for society. I'm gonna go C tier here, and here's why. You really got to get into the research in order to investigate historically and over the course of just humanity, the last 2,000 years, and even just sociology in general, that this is not true. That the secular societies are actually really struggling with birth rates. So if a society is struggling with birth rates, they're not producing enough people to reproduce the society, it will collapse in on itself, right? And so that's one problem. The second is, man, all of the secular values, whether it's like intrinsic worth, like morality, like empathy, all that, it's all birthed out of Christianity anyways, right? And what's his name? Tom Holland. He's got a book called Dominion, where he's just not even a Christian, and he just looks at all this idea that secularism is better, and just goes, nonsense, right? Like Christian societies are better. You got Richard Dawkins, an atheist who's feeling the effects of Islam taking over London in the UK, and he's going, we need the Christian society. We need to get back to that one. That one is better. And so, but like I said, you got to do some research for this one, so I'll put it at C tier. The next one is you just lack critical thinking. You just lack critical thinking. I kind of want to go S tier, but we're gonna go A. We're gonna go A tier. You just lack critical thinking. There's just a lot of people on both sides that lack critical thinking. Critical thinking is not in any correlation with whether or not you believe God exists, which is why this is a dumb thing to say. There are both Christians, atheists, Muslims, Jews, like fill in the blank. There's people in every single worldview that lack critical thinking. That's just true. But guess what? There's people in every single worldview that are deep critical thinkers. So to just say that because someone believes in God or because someone is a Christian, because they lack critical thinking, is dumb, which is why it's going in A tier. This next one, there is no evidence for God. Straight to S tier. One of the dumbest things that you can say. You can say things like, there's not good evidence for God, or I think there's lacking evidence for God. But the moment I hear it all the time, this actual phrase, there is no evidence for God. That is simply not true. And maybe what someone means is there's no empirical evidence for God. I think there's even some contention there that people would strike back with. But I just think of two things, right off the top. There's a major problem in an atheistic worldview on infinite regression. A major problem there that makes total sense with a creator. So there's one piece of evidence. Another one, you can think about the fine-tuning argument. You can think about it in a macro sense and just the constants of the universe and what the universe needs to actually exist to not only make life, and then you have the problem with, okay, life exists, but then how does consciousness come about? Like, you just have a lot of holes there in the atheistic worldview that don't have good answers outside of a creator. It's just like a random fact I think is fascinating. If you took all the DNA in all of the cells in one human body, just one, so me right here, if you stretched out all of my DNA from all of my cells, it would go to the sun and back like 350 times, which is insane. And I just think, okay, maybe the time is there for the complexities to develop. The problem is just how the complexity develops of a living being, and to think that it's just natural processes, that it's not guided by a mind, that's just really dumb. Like, you look at the fine tuning of the universe, and it gives a lot more kind of push to theism, to creation, rather than something natural. Last thing I'll say on this, I think like if AI ever like truly becomes conscious, this would be a huge W for theism. Why? Because of the amount of conscious brain power it took to get there. Like, it was completely guided by a being outside of itself in order to attain consciousness. It did not happen naturally. And in the same way, I think there's a good argument that just consciousness in general could not happen naturally without some type of mind to guide it. So, going in S tier. You say there's none, you're just being ignorant. Stop saying it. This next one is you only believe because of the place that you were born. You only believe because of the place you were born. I'm going to give this B tier because it kind of sounds really good on the surface. Like, well, you're only a Christian because you were born in a largely Christian place like America, or you're only a Muslim because you were born in, a largely Muslim place, maybe somewhere in the Middle East. Sounds really good off the top. Couple problems with that. One, if you are an atheist in America, you don't believe in the largest worldview in your country. So it's like a self-defeating claim. Like, you're not a Christian, even though you're born in a place where it's majority Christian. So there's that to think about. The other is, this is what's actually called the genetic fallacy. Why is it fallacious? Because it doesn't matter where you're born. That doesn't have anything to do with what's actually true. So even if I was born in India and I was a Hindu, that doesn't make Hinduism true. Christianity can still be true. Or anything, like, there's just a lot of problems with saying that. But I totally see how it could be stated. It's just really easy to refute. Just to go, yeah, like, truth isn't based on where you're born. So who cares in that sense? Like, where somebody is born. That doesn't have any effect on what's true. This next one, this is the only one that kind of, I don't know, looks a little weird. But the best way to deconstruct is to read your Bible. We're going A tier. Okay, the best way to deconstruct, the best way to leave the Christian faith is just to read the Bible. Why is it dumb? It usually comes from people who grew up in Christian backgrounds who never read the Bible, and then they start reading it, and then they like leave the faith. Which I think is hilarious, because basically what's happened is, instead of you actually constructing any critical thought around the Bible, you just listen to what other people said your whole life instead of actually investigating what they were saying was true. That's essentially what is happening. Rather than actually dealing with the text itself and coming, to your own opinions or coming to your own understanding of what it's saying, you just listen to other people. You got sucked up in a culture or community without actually investigating it. So then you read it, you realized, oh, no one ever talks about this, or, oh, this actually says this. Yeah, that was always there. You just didn't know it. And so it comes to a surprise because you weren't reading the Bible in the first place, right? That's my first issue with it. The second is this. Millions of people across time have become Christians by reading the Bible. It's actually the best tool to become a Christian, not to leave Christianity. I'm not saying no one has ever read the Bible and then deconstructed after that. But what I'm saying is, if you want to, kind of weigh it out, it's actually the best way to become a Christian is to read the Bible. That's why it's a pretty dumb thing to say. Ooh. We're going S tier again. These top three for sure. Like, these three are just the dumbest things. And this one is, do you really believe in fairy tales? S tier. Stop saying it. You sound dumb. This is another, like, when someone drops this one, this is when I know you don't know what you're talking about. You have no idea. You probably haven't even read the Bible if you think that it's a book of fairy tales. The Bible is mainly just the history of the Jewish nation being established and how it played out. And then the second half is Jesus, the Messiah, and how the promise given to Abraham to see his offspring be a blessing to the nations is now occurring in Jesus, the Messiah, as we see the message of who he is go out into the world. Like there's actually a meta-narrative of Scripture following the history of the Jewish people until Christianity bursts on the scene. The Messiah, Jesus, the Christ, so we have Christianity, and how that played out, right? And what you're doing is you're taking the Bible, who like real scholarship does not look at the Bible and say this is fairy tales. It doesn't mean that they believe everything that's stated, but when they read it in its literary context, they don't go, "Oh, this is all fiction." No, they understand, and so many of the stories in the Bible, have been actually proven. One example that just kind of comes to my mind off the top is like Hezekiah, and he's the king of the northern or southern kingdom at the time. I can't remember, but they're being invaded and they're being sieged, and so he digs tunnels to, I think, get water into the city. This is totally off the top. I know that he digs tunnels for whatever reason to help the people during the siege. A lot of people, it's like, was this made up? Did this actually happen? Then they found his tunnels. It's like, oh my gosh, like this actually happened. Like this king actually built these tunnels out during siege of a war because it's a historical thing of a real story that happened. A lot of people doubted that David existed until like 100 years ago, 150 years ago, whenever it was. All of a sudden, they found some text of somebody talking about him, like some other nation talking about this Jewish King David. Oh my gosh, he's a real person. Like that's why it's an S tier. When somebody says this, once again, I don't take them seriously. And we'll round it out with number 10. No hate like Christian love. We're going to go A tier. Pretty dumb thing to say. No hate like Christian love. Why? Because Christians have loved people better than any other group in the entire history of the world. 100%. During the Black Plague, Christians were going out and caring for people while others were leaving their friends and family out on the street to die. Not the Christians. They're out there. In ancient Rome, when people would just leave their children on the streets because they didn't want them, Christians would take them in. They would adopt them. They would care for them. And guess what? That was a perfectly fine common practice. You had a baby for whatever reason, you didn't want it. Who cares? You just kind of let it go die. Christians are like, nah, not us. We're not doing that. Everyone has intrinsic value. Everyone's made in the image of God. Yeah, Christians, believe it or not, you can thank Christianity for the abolishment of slavery. So it's like hospitals, public education, literacy rates going up. This is Christians doing in the history of the world. And not to mention just the moral basis of the modern Western society. It's all built on Christianity and how to treat people. No hate like Christian love has got to be. I'm like move it to S tier. I'll leave it there, but gosh, it's got to be one of the dumbest things that I've ever heard. And so, if you happen to be an atheist and you watch this, just stop saying this stuff. It's dumb. If you're a Christian and you watch this, you get me. You get me. These are dumb things, and everyone should just stop saying them. But there you go. That's my top 10. A lot of fun. What do you think? You got any phrases that I missed? Write them down in the comments. But I just wanted to throw out some dumb things that atheists say. And man, shoot the subscribe. Hit me with the like. I'd really appreciate it. Have a good one. Peace.